You're on mute, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji, Dandat Pranam.
Yeah, Bahari Prabhuji, you're on mute in case you're speaking.
Narayanam namaskrityam naram chaiva narottamam devim saraswatim vyasam tato jaya udire Rashtraprayeshu Bhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavate Uttam Shloke Bhaktir Bhaktir Naishtaki Om Agyantamirandasya Gyananjana Shalakya Chakshuranmalitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasadi Gaur Bhaktavinda Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Namo Vishwanath Shiksha Bhutale Srimati Bhakti Vedanta Swamiti Namane Namaste Saraswati Devi Gaurvani Visharane Nirvishesha Shunavadi Paschachadeshakar. So thank you so much for joining. I'm very excited today, beginning new module, new book, one of the most interesting books in the Bhakti Shastri. Relatively short, but fairly philosophically dense. So without further ado, I will hand it over to Rup Raghunath so that we can start with the group presentations. Thank you.
Yes, Prabhuji. Looking forward to the group presentations, which we are starting tomorrow. So group 1 will do mantra 1, 2, 3 summary, and the group 2 will do the next 3 verses. So over to group 1.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji, please accept our humble obeisances. All glories to Guru Maharaj and Srila Prabhupada. Yes. Am I audible, Prabhu?
Yes, Mataji.
Thank you so much. Yeah. So we'll start with mantras 1 to 3, which the core teaching summarizes as how to live in harmony with Krishna. So second slide, please. Yeah. Here, the mantra 1, the translation is, everything animate or inanimate that is within the universe is controlled and owned by the Lord. One should therefore accept only those things necessary for himself, which are set aside as his quota, and one should not accept other things, knowing well to whom they belong. So here the core teaching is the position of the Supreme Lord, Krishna. So here the foundation has been laid. The foundation of this verse talk about the divine proprietorship. That is what Isha Vashya, as mentioned in the verse. So every atom in the universe belongs to and is controlled by the Supreme Lord, and nothing exists independently of divine will and energy. All the creation is the energy of the Supreme, like how heat emanates from the fire. But in modern civilization, the illusion of the false proprietorship is the root cause of all individual and collective problems, which leads to exploitation, war, and environmental destruction. And the material consciousness creates anxiety, greed, and spiritual ignorance. So the solution provided by this mantra 1 is how understanding this, who's a divine proprietor, transforms our relationship with all the positions, and the recognition of the divine proprietorship brings peace. Next slide. Yeah. Here, the paradox is how to enjoy through renunciation. It is mentioned as tena tyaktena bhunjita in the verse. So the science of renunciation is how true enjoyment comes not from possession, but from proper consciousness of the Supreme Lord and our position. We are the servants of the Lord. So the spiritual detachment is when everything is utilized in his service while claiming ownership of nothing. So this renunciation of the false proprietorship gives us the freedom from anxiety. Hence, Karma Yoga principle is emphasized here as act without attachment to the results of ownership. As Prabhupada's example, the rich man's house, just as a guest in rich man's house should not claim ownership of the property or take more than what is offered. We should understand our position in God's creation. So, with this understanding, when we function as a caretaker, not the owner, and receives what comes as divine grace and use resources for intended purposes and attain satisfaction with what is provided naturally. Similarly, both capitalism and communism fail because they don't recognize the Lord's proprietorship. And the true solution is the God-centered economy. As Prabhupada always quotes, when the God-centered economy is the only solution where everyone takes only what they need, which is the rightful share. Next slide, please. So here comes the quota system, which is the divine economics. This is ma gridha, as quoted in the verse. So the natural distribution. So each living entity receives exactly what is needed, and greed should be prohibited. Nature provides abundantly when not exploited, and everyone's genuine needs are met in divine arrangement. Prabhupada gives an example of cow. A cow produces milk, but it is meant for the calf first, and cow cannot consume milk. That is a natural position. Similarly, everything in nature has a purpose in the Supreme Lord's plan. Taking more than needed disrupts the natural order. And what happens when we ignore this teaching? One who takes more than allotted is considered as a thief in the eyes of God, regardless of social position or the legal ownership. So what happens when we understand the teaching? When the consciousness is transformed from material to spiritual consciousness, we develop the natural response to understanding divine love and attain liberation through surrender to the divine will. A human being is sufficiently intelligent to take lessons from the Vedic literature and therefore know how the laws of nature are working and derive profit out of such knowledge. But if a man neglects the instructions of the Vedic literature, his life becomes very risky. A human being is therefore required to recognize the authority of the Supreme Lord and become his devotee. So the ultimate goal is Krishna consciousness. So one must offer everything for the Lord's service and partake only the remnants of food offered to the Lord. This will enable him to discharge his duty properly. In Bhagavad Gita 9:26, the Lord directly states that he accepts vegetarian food from the hands of the pure devotee. So this mantra 1 essentially establishes the fundamental principle of seeing everything in relation to the Supreme Lord and living with the consciousness of divine stewardship rather than the material ownership. Hence, by living according to the Ishavasya principle, one can attain peace, prosperity, and ultimately liberation. Next slide, mantra 2. Yeah.
Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna. Mantra 2. One may aspire to live for the 100 years if continuously goes on working in that way. For that, the short work will not bind him to the law of karma. There is no alternative to this way for a man. The core teaching is Karma Yoga with Jnana. This mantra explains the benefit of working on Ishvara consciousness. There are 3 types of actions as per the Bhagavad Gita stated in 4.17 as below. Karma, the material action that binds. Akarma, the spiritual action that liberates. Vikarma, the sinful action that degrades. Akarma, Srila Prabhupada explains that the karma means action that binds us. But when the same action is performed in Krishna consciousness, it becomes akarma, the action that liberates. Srila Prabhupada about the longevity in Krishna consciousness. If one engage in the devotional service of the Lord, he has no fear of the death, nor he has any desire for the birth. For a devotee, both death and birth are one at the same time. Satma Smaha, the 100 years of services. Srila Prabhupada explains that this does not mean we should desire long life for the material enjoyment, but every moment we should be used for in Krishna services. For example, Haridasa Thakur, despite of is being beaten and tortured, Haridasa Sahu never stopped chanting the Hare Krishna mantra. Daily he chanted 3 lakhs names for the Krishna daily. He lived for the service of the holy name, not for the personal comfort. So the Karma Yoga Vijnana, the Prabhupada explanation for the doctor's duty. Just the doctor performed the operation for not the personal gain, but the duty to the patient. The spiritually consciousness person perform all duties the service to the Supreme Lord, remain unattached to the result. So how to approach the Karma Yoga in a right approach actually. One is the work as a duty to serve the Lord, no attachment to the result, perform all work as a services, maintain the spiritual consciousness, achieve the liberation through the actions. So karma bandha, that's the incorrect approach. The work for the personal gain, attached to the result, motivated by the material desire, lose the spiritual awareness, and create the karmic bondages. The key principles, the same action can either bind or liberate depending on the consciousness behind it. Prabhupada insights the quality versus the quantity of the life. The mantra does not encourage mere longevity of the material enjoyment, but whereas advocate for utilizing the full span of the spiritual perfection. The 100 years representation, the complete opportunity for the self-realization. Prabhupada clarifies here, this is about the spiritual life extension, not the material life extension. So the practical examples, the householder duty, the family man does not need to abandon his responsibilities. Instead, he should maintain the family as a service to Krishna, raise the children in the spiritual consciousness, work to support family without attachment, use the home for the spiritual practices. The pseudo renunciation is the mistake actually. So those artificially renunciation work often fall into laziness, distinguished as the spirituality, dependency on the other labor, mental speculation without the practical engagement, eventual return to the material activities with the greater attachments. The signs non-attachment for the Prabhupada lotus leaf analogy. Like lotus leaf that remains unaffected by the water, the karma yogi unaffected by the material activities. The leaf touches the water but does not get wet. Similarly, the devotee acts in the world but remain spiritually pure. Another analogy of the existing building safely rather than jumping out the window, highlight that while vertically there may be many options, practically only path for the Ishvara. The consciousness leads to the liberation without harm. So the practice of Karma Yoga with Jnana, the Karma Yoga with Jnana, the Jnana Yoga emphasizes the renunciation of the action. The Karma Yoga, as described here, the promotes the engaged in action without attachment. Prabhupada explains his practically as a Karma Yoga with Jnana by addressing the common misconception about the materialism, false renunciation, dry philosophy, ritualism, and proposed below as the balanced approaches, neither the material attachment nor material artificial renunciation. Work according to one natural and position. Maintain the spiritual consciousness in all activities, seeks the guidance from the scriptures and the spiritual masters. the complete picture, the Prabhupada emphasized that this mantra provides the perfect solution to the modern life, remaining engaged in the necessary activities while making the spiritual progress. Mantra third.
Yeah, thank you. Here comes mantra 3. The translation goes, the killer of the soul, whoever he may be, must enter the planets known as the worlds of the faithless, full of darkness and ignorance. The core teaching here emphasized is karma without jnana, like what happens when we perform the actions without the jnana. While mantras 1 and 2 showed positive paths, like how we can renunciate and act, mantra 3 warns of the negative consequences of spiritual ignorance and negligence. So the consequences of rejecting the Ishavasya consciousness is those who reject Ishavasya and engage in materialistic pursuits without spiritual understanding are termed asuras, or soul killers, and are destined to live in dark, ignorant worlds called Asurya Loka after death. So Prabhupada explains the concept of the Asura Lokas, like they are the hellish planetary systems or realms of existence which are characterized by complete spiritual darkness and ignorance. They represent the opposite of divine, enlightened realms. It is a state of consciousness devoid of divine knowledge and realization. So Prabhupada also explains what is the difference between suras and asuras. So, human life is distinguished from animal life due to its heavy responsibilities. Those who are cognizant of these responsibilities and who work in that spirit are called suras. They are godly persons. And those who are neglectful of these responsibilities or who have no information of them are called asuras, demons. Suras represents those who align the Vedic wisdom and strive for liberation, while asuras reject or misuse the scriptural knowledge for materialism. So Prabhupada quotes an example like, even on earth, we can see the glimpses of these demoniac conditions in societies that have completely rejected the spiritual values, where people live like animals, focused only on material gratification without any higher consciousness. So what is the concept of killing the soul? So Atmahanyo Jhana refers to those who kill or destroy the soul. This doesn't mean literal destruction of the eternal soul. Rather, it refers to neglecting, ignoring, or harming one's spiritual nature. So Prabhupada defines as the soul killer is not necessarily a murderer, but anyone who identifies completely with the material body and forgets their spiritual nature. They literally kill the soul by denying its existence or neglecting its needs. So Prabhupada explains with an example like a person who spends their entire life accumulating wealth, enjoying sensual pleasures, are never considering their spiritual nature is gradually killing their soul. They may be successful materially, but are spiritually dead. Next slide, please. Okay. Here, Prabhupada explains about the types of darkness. So there are 3 levels of spiritual darkness. They are tamas, which is ignorance, and rajas, which is passion, and andha tamas, which is the blind darkness, which is the complete spiritual blindness. So here andha tamas represents the deepest ignorance where one cannot distinguish between right and wrong, spiritual and material, or temporary and eternal. Prabhupada often states that modern scientists can understand complete material phenomena, but remain completely ignorant about the soul, the consciousness, and the spiritual reality. This is the andha tamas. So the science of spiritual darkness is the inability to distinguish between body and soul. Thinking material success equals spiritual advancement and believing death is just the end of existence, and considering humans and animals are essentially the same, and ultimately rejecting the need for spiritual guidance. Next slide, please. So here the consequences, how this immediate and future is impacted. So the immediate consequences are due to the spiritual blindness is One person is in constant anxiety and fear. They have never-ending material desires, and they can never find the lasting happiness, and this degrades the consciousness, and they can never discriminate right and wrong. And it doesn't stop there. It continues in the future life as well. So they take birth in demonic species or planets, and they continue to have spiritual ignorance, and they have difficulty in spiritual advancement and getting increased material entanglement back and back. So Prabhupada explains that the modern civilization, despite technological advancement, often promotes the soul killing through encouraging only the material education, promoting excessive sense gratification, and denying spiritual dimension of life, creating competitive and godless societies. Prabhupada quotes, the so-called advancement of human civilization is actually leading people towards these demoniac worlds by encouraging them to forget their spiritual nature. Next slide, please. So here we can see the consequences of Ishavasya consciousness, like how the human form is very precious for the spiritual opportunity. The human form is uniquely valuable because it allows the conscious pursuit of spiritual advancement. And how Krishna's mercy and divine reciprocity. So the Lord is infinitely forgiving towards sincere devotees, even those who struggle. The fate of those who reject him is governed by karmic justice rather than divine wrath. So Krishna's apparent non-intervention with non-devotees is a form of reciprocation, respecting free will and the law of cause and effect, reinforcing the idea that spiritual consequences are natural outcomes rather than the personal punishments. So Ishavasya consciousness manifests differently depending upon one's spiritual platform, whether it is Karma Yoga or Bhakti Yoga. While detachment is a lower form, the higher form involves loving surrender and relationship with Krishna, making the practice more permanent and deeply transformative. This dual approach accommodates practitioners at different stages while encouraging progression towards devotion. And spiritual progress is permanent, whereas the material gains are just temporary. So only advancement in bhakti, our spiritual consciousness, is enduring, highlighting the fundamental Vedic teaching that material gains are just ephemeral, whereas spiritual growth is eternal and protect against the suffering. So next slide, please. So how Prabhupada's positive teaching can help protect us from spiritual suicide. So this mantra serves as a warning to awaken us to spiritual consciousness. The solution is to cultivate spiritual knowledge and practice devotional service to avoid this tragic fate. So the spiritual protection can be derived practically by regular spiritual practice and remember our spiritual identity, study of spiritual scriptures and cultivate devotional service, by association with devotees and by seeking spiritual guidance, chanting the holy names and practice compassion to all the living beings, service to the spiritual master and live according to the spiritual principles. So the positive alternative is a protection. So instead of demoniac worlds, those who cultivate spiritual consciousness will attain spiritual planets full of light and knowledge, association with enlightened beings, and unlimited spiritual happiness, freedom from material suffering, and eternal relationship with the Supreme Lord. So this mantra is not just to frighten, but to awaken us to the serious consequences of spiritual negligence and inspire us to take up the path of spiritual realization. Next slide, please. So the summary here is how the complete science of God realization is emphasized in this mantra, first three mantras. So the choice is ours. We can either kill the soul through material attachment or nourish it through spiritual practice. The consequences follow naturally from our choice. So Prabhupada often quotes the Ishopanishad is the foremost among all the Upanishads. It is the essence of all Vedic knowledge and contains the most confidential knowledge about the relationship between Supreme Lord and his devotees. So here these three mantras contains the complete science of God realization. They are not mere philosophy, but practical instructions for achieving the highest perfection of human life. Where mantra 1, just to summarize, mantra 1 talks about recognition, like everything belongs to Krishna. And how can we practice it? By living simply and take only what is needed. And as a result, it gives peace and satisfaction. Mantra 2 gives about engagement. The realization work can be spiritual, not just material. And we can practice by offering all activities to Krishna, which results us from the karmic bondage. And Mantra 3 gives a warning. It makes us realize the human life is very precious, and it can be practiced by not wasting time in the material pursuits, and where we can avoid the spiritual degradation. Hare Krishna. Thank you so much, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Group 1. Excellent job. I liked how you stayed at a fairly high level, but still covered all the points. And especially liked how you ended up with a summation of the section that kind of spoke about the common point that was developed by the 3 mantras. Very well done. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna.
Okay, over to group 2 for the next presentation.
Hare Krishna, devotees. So we are group 2 and we are presenting today on qualities of the Lord, mantra 4 to 6, Sri Upanishad. Next slide, please. So mantra 4 is purport. Although fixed in his abode, the personality of Godhead is swifter than the mind and can overcome all others running. The powerful demigods cannot approach him. Although in one place he controls those who supply the air and rain, he surpasses all in excellence. Next slide. So Lord has his transcendental abode, Goloka, where he eternally remains, yet he is inconceivable. By his inconceivable energy, he can simultaneously reach every part of his own creation. Analogy given is of heat and light that comes out from fire, and the reference is from Vishnu Puran. So Lord cannot be understood by mental speculation. Even if the speculator tries to travel at the speed of mind for hundreds and millions of years, Lord can only be known by devotion. And that is what Lord repeatedly explains throughout the scriptures, and most importantly through Bhagavad Gita. Next slide, please. It's the purport of mantra 4. So powerful demigods cannot approach him. So Lord has innumerable energies divided into 3 main categories: internal energy, external energy, and marginal energies. Human beings, demigods, they fall under marginal energies. And demigods are empowered by the Lord to control material phenomena like air, rain, light, heat, but they cannot act independently from the Lord. Spiritual world actually is the manifestation of Lord's internal energy, while material world is the manifestation of Lord's external energy. Lord and his energies are not different, but one should not think that Lord and his energies are the same. So Lord's energies are his subordinates, and they do not have any separate existence from him. I mean, they do not have any independent existence from him. So Lord is Shakti and his energies are Shakti. I mean, Lord is Shaktiman and his energies are Shaktis. So, and Maya. So Maya is the state of existence when marginal potency feels that he is the doer under the influence of Lord's external energy. Or in other words, when the Lord's marginal potency thinks that they want to enjoy separately from the Lord and gets in contact with Lord's external energy, that state is Maya. And Lord is never under the influence of his external energy. So that's the difference between Lord and the Jivas. Next slide, please. Lord is a person, and this is a very big thing. He's not impersonal, he's not energy, he's a person. He has energies, but his energies are separate has separate existence than his. An example given is like hand and the energy contained in the hand. Hand and energies are different, or the person and the energy in the person. Now, Mayavadi philosophers or Mayavadis think that Lord is impersonal, and that is an incomplete understanding. It is not a complete understanding according to the scriptures. Now, Lord's part and parcels, jivas, they have the same qualities as the Lord, but Lord is unlimited, while jivas are limited. Lord is unlimitedly free, while jivas are, or his energies are dependent on the existence of the Lord. Next slide, please. Mantra 5. And the Supreme Lord walks and does not walk. He is far away, but he is very near as well. He is within everything, and yet he is outside of everything. So this mantra talks about Lord's inconceivable potencies. And sometimes Lord's inconceivable potencies, externally it may look like they are contradicting for us because we are conditioned, but from Lord's perspective there is no contradictions, meaning Lord can walk and not walk at the same time. So one must accept that Lord has internal inconceivable potencies, and we should not use our limited knowledge, and we are in a position to evaluate and understand Lord by our capacity. So we have to take it as it is, that Lord has inconceivable potencies. And this is where the Mayavadi philosophy or Mayavadi philosophers get confused, because they accept only the Lord's impersonal features, but devotee Bhagavad philosophy, who understands Bhagavad philosophy, understand that Lord has both personal and impersonal potencies, as devotee believe in the Lord's inconceivable potencies. Next slide, please. So, Lord, another far away, but he is not very near as well. This is another example of Lord's inconceivable potency. Like explained earlier, that Lord is existing eternally in his Goloka planet, but at the same time he is existing everywhere in his creation, so he is near as well. Now generally people have understanding that seeing is believing, but the question is, do you have the eyes or qualities to see? That is also a question. So we cannot see bacteria by our naked eyes, so we need microscope. In the same way, if we want to see Lord, we need his devotion, as explained in Bhagavad Gita and other Vedic scriptures. So to see the Lord is not on our whim or our desire, or we want to see the Lord doesn't mean we oblige the Lord to see. It's only through devotion, and when he wants to reveal himself, that's when he reveals. So non-believers, that's why they cannot understand how Lord can manifest as Archa Vigraha in the deity form made of material energy, because they do not accept Lord's inconceivable potency. Lord accept this Archa Avatara, and this is also supported by the scriptures. And devotees understand that Lord can convert material energy to the spiritual energy. He can do anything, as devotees believe that Lord has inconceivable energy. Next slide, please. And Siva Prabhu, can you continue the next slide?
Lord Hare Krishna, everyone. Please accept my humble obeisances. The Lord reveals himself only to the surrendered soul. So atheists and Mahavadi have no understanding of how the Lord reciprocates as the Archa Vigraha. Mahavadi thinks that when the Lord manifests, he gets material qualities, that is Saguna, and when he exists in his original form without any qualities, Nirguna. This is not true. Nothing is material qualities for the Lord, as he is not subject to the whim of his energy. For example, if a king goes to inspect the jail, he is not subject to the jurisdiction of the jail. Similarly, the Lord is always independent of his creation and energy. Another example is when Narasimhadev appeared from the pillar to save Prahlad Maharaj and kill Hiranyakashipu. Lord is present everywhere but reveals only to his devotee out of affection or out of love. Srila Prabhupada further quotes Brahma Samhita 5.35 to clarify Lord inconceivable potencies, Virat from outside, Antaryami from inside, and Karmaphala as witness. So the mantra 6 purport: see everything in relation to the Supreme Lord, Mahabhagavata, pure devotee, and Uttamadhikari. Devotee are classified under three stages: Kanishta Adhikari, Madhyam Adhikari, and Uttama Adhikari. Kanishta is the lowest stage, while Uttama is the highest stage of a devotee. A devotee grows from Kanishta to Madhyama to Uttama. For example, a mango becomes a ripe mango over time with proper care. So there's a distinct qualities of green mango to the ripe mango. So here's this table shows the characteristics of the devotee in three different stages, like Kanishta Adhikari, see Lord in as a localized to temple or place of worship, whereas Madhava Adhikari can make a distinction between the Lord, devotee, innocent people, and atheist, and Uttama Adhikari, she Lord in everything, like temple, atheist, thief, and devotee. Uttama Adhikari knows that Lord is omnipresent, is everywhere. Kanishta Adhikari is not in position to recognize advanced devotee and are sometimes quarrelsome. Madhyama Adhikari treat devotee with love, try to awaken dormant love of God within the innocent and avoid association of atheists. And Uttama Adhikari treat all living entities as spiritual soul without making judgment of their past karma and the body they currently possess. Try to do good for all, either as a dog or Brahmin. So that's the distinction of the Uttama Adhikari. In Kanishta Adhikari, materially contaminated, simply trying to gain a spiritual plane. So that's how we evolve from Kanishta to Madhyama and Uttama. Now, Uttamadhikari, imitating Uttamadhikari is dangerous. For example, material philanthropists, they think that they can solve all the problem with donation or like giving what they have. One cannot be one under the material platform. Spiritually, oneness means the Lord and the energy exist simultaneously, and the energy is always subordinate to the Lord. The Mayavadi conception of oneness is a futile attempt, as it cannot realize that the soul cannot exist without a spiritual body, which is the basic for interaction between the Lord and his devotee. Systematically sees everything in relation to the Supreme Lord. So that's the another qualities of Uttamadhikari. You cannot be a doctor by buying a books or self-study. Similarly, one needs a bona fide guru in a parampara of Vyasadeva to explain the science of devotional service. Under the proper care of the guru and devotee, Kanishta grow into Uttama Adhikari in due course of time. So this concludes our presentation of Sri Ishopanishad, mantra 4, 5, and 6. Do you have any question?
Thank you, Prabhu. We'll take questions at the end, but thank you very much for this very nice summation, and also I think attention to the main points. I enjoyed the presentation. Thank you, Prabhu.
Yeah, so Prabhuji, we it's a segue into Q&A only. So if people wants to ask questions, more of a discussion now.
Okay. So any questions over the mantras that were presented to the presenters or to me? Yes, Chaitanya Das Prabhu.
Hare Krishna Prabhu. My question is more on, I mean, for us devotees, it is easy to understand the Ishavashyam Idam Sarvam, and also the Pranam mantra, and then the first mantra where he's everything, he's, even if the part and parcels are there, but still he's complete. Those mantras, it's easy for us to understand because we have faith or some certain amount of faith with us. So we do accept those mantras. How do we explain this to like a altogether new person when we are doing some book distribution, or because that's where I try to explain in a way that it is not a matter of whether you're a Hindu or a Christian or a Muslim or any other religion. It's one supreme source of truth, or like one um, father, supreme father, that we all emanate from. So how do we, what are the points that we can explain using these mantras to them, to a new person altogether?
Thank you, Prabhu. Excellent question. A couple of observations. So mantras like the Bhagavad Gita shlokas, the Upanishad mantras, they are mostly used to support the basic points. So you were making some basic points that were bridge points, right? That all the religions believe in universal fatherhood, and the notion of brotherhood comes from a single father. So these are the kind of the connecting points that that you make, and then they can be substantiated by from Gita, Upanishad, or other scriptures. Very rarely, unless you're preaching to somebody who is also fairly well read, very rarely you can flip it around and quote the mantra as a direct preaching point. Srila Prabhupada would say that, so earlier on, sometimes devotees would say that when they're preaching, most of the people don't understand Sanskrit, most of the people don't understand what the mantras are. And Prabhupada would say, you still speak them because they come with their potency. And that each of the mantras are the sound incarnation of the Vedas and Krishna, so we can still preach them. So if you're talking about the notion of how to live together in a conducive environment, right? So that point stands on its own. That wouldn't you like people to come and live together in harmony? And the scriptures actually talk from a very practical prospect. Ishavasimitam sarvam. That if as long as people are establishing their own ownership, there will always be conflict. But if you change the concept of ownership with quota, then immediately the conflict goes away. Right? So that's the magic of this verse, that it does not do away with. That's what Prabhupada says. All these forms of isms are doomed for failure, right? Because they're going against the basic point of every jiva needing something
Coexistence.
for coexistence. But now, so you're not denying that the person needs something. All that you're saying is that we are changing the notion of ownership to quota, right? And then that opens up the opportunity for follow-up question: how do we know what our quota is? That's an excellent question. There's the Varnashram Dharma that establishes what the quota is, and that's why you have to take guidance. So if you can use them as substantiating artifacts, so they add authenticity to what we say, and then there is the transcendental aspect of saying this, while supporting the bridge points that you're making.
Thank you, Prabhu.
Thank you. Sri Padma, please go ahead.
Hare Krishna Prabhu, very nice presentations. As Prabhu was talking, I was thinking, like, those who study the Bible or know a little bit about the Bible, you can say like the mantras or like Psalms, like Psalms 23 about who the Lord is, or what the Lord does. Only our way is telling us, like the supremacy of the Lord and how to get detachment straight on to liberation. So it reminds me a little about how Christianity has the Psalms for the mantras.
And building on that, also how every religion relies on some form of scripture for guidance, right? So ultimately, it has to be based on faith, right? So because if you look at it, almost all the religions, the dependence is circular. Like you say that, how do you know Krishna is God? Bhagavad Gita says that Krishna is God. How do you know that Bhagavad Gita is authoritative? Because it's spoken by Krishna, who is God. So at some point in all religions, the reasoning becomes circular, and that's because it cannot be empirical or inductive. But the notion of faith then comes in. That how do we, this is a self-serving logic. That you're saying Krishna is God because Gita says it, and Gita is authoritative because Krishna served it. So it's a self-serving logic. But essentially, where faith comes into picture, and Prabhupada talks about in the introduction, is that maybe you can theoretically accept that Krishna is God and Bhagavad Gita is the word of God, and then you do what Bhagavad Gita asks you to do, and then if it delivers, then you understand that your theoretical assumption is justified. Right? So unless you actually act upon it, you will always be caught in this and trying to break the circular logic. And this is not something that is specific to any one religion. All religions do that. Why is Bible authoritative? It's the word of Christ. Right? And what makes Christ special? It says so in Bible. Right? So almost all the religions follow that circular logic. Okay, anything else? Okay, if not, then we will end here. Wanted to once again congratulate both the groups. Excellent summation and very good presentation. Thank you so much. Manchakalpatarubhyascha kripa sindhubhya cha patitanaam pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo
Namo Namaha.
Anant Koti Vaishnavind
Govinda ki
jai.
jai.
Prabhupada ki jai.
Ki jai.
Jai Gaur Premanand.
Hari Hari Bol.
Thank you, Prabhuji.
Thank you, Prabhuji.
Jai Krishna.
Thank you, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna.
Thank you.